Hey y'all, so I was reading Sister Outsider by Audre Lorde this evening, and I wanted to share a passage. So, if you would like to listen along, I would appreciate that. Oh my god, this book is so good thus far. Searching the Surface, Some Notes on Barriers to Women and Loving. And then there's a little asterisk. First published in The Black Scholar, Volume 9, Number 7, in 1978. Racism, the belief in the inherent superiority of one race over all others and therefore the right to dominance. Sexism, the belief in the inherent superiority of one sex and thereby the right to dominance. Heterosexism, the belief in the inherent superiority of one pattern of loving and thereby its right to dominance. Homophobia, the fear of feeling of love for members of one's own sex and therefore the hatred of those feelings in others. The above forms of human blindness stem from the same root: an inability to recognize the notion of difference as a dynamic human force, one which is enriching rather than threatening to the defined self when there are shared goals. To a large degree, at least verbally, the Black community has moved beyond the 2 steps behind her man concept of sexual relationships sometimes mouthed at as desirable during the 60s. This was a time when the myth of the Black matriarchy as a social disease was being presented by racist forces to redirect our attentions away from the real sources of Black oppression. For Black women, as well as Black men, it is oh my god, I just had that, I can't say it. I can say it. Let me look it up. I just looked it up too. Axiomatic. Self-evident or unquestionable. Let's write that down. Axiomatic. Self-evident. For Black women as well as Black men, it is axiomatic that if we do not define ourselves for ourselves, we will be defined by others we will be defined by others for their use and to our detriment. $2. Pause. Rock My Soul talks about self-esteem and like the definition, and like especially for Black people living in a very like anti-Black world. What does it mean when your Blackness is determined by people that are dead set on oppressing you, type of thing, or rather your Blackness is defined by your cultural and historical legacy, you know? Next book. The Miseducation of the Negro. Know Thyself by Naeem Akbar. We'll just do those 2. I have another one, but we'll keep reading. I have a couple books that actually kind of relate to that, and like, anyways. The development of self-defined Black women ready to explore and pursue our power and interests within our communities is a vital component in the war for Black liberation. Girl. Distant love. This one. Black Feminist Thought by Patricia Hill Collins. She talks about the power of self-definition. This chapter, I think it's chapter 4, it's right here. It's really good. Chapter 5, The Power of Self-Definition. In order to survive, those of us for whom oppression is as American as apple pie have always had to be the watchers, asserts Black feminist poet Audre Lorde. This watching generates a dual consciousness in African American women, one in which Black women become familiar with the language and manners of the oppressor, even when sometimes adopting them for some illusion of protection, while hiding a self-defined standpoint from the prying eyes of dominant groups. We have always been the best actors in the world. I think that we are much more clever than they are because we know that we have to play the game. We've always had to live two lives, one for them and one for ourselves. And that gets into like Du Bois's double consciousness. And then there was, I think, Alice Childress is the one that said, like, being a Black, I have to go back. This one's in Black internationalist feminism. I love it. Being a Black woman is like being in a minstrel show. You're putting on a performance. But I have to check my sources, so don't quote me on that one. But anyways, keep going. Sorry. The image of the Angolan woman with a baby on one arm and a gun in the other is neither romantic nor fanciful. When Black women in this country come together to examine our sources of strength and support and to recognize our common social, cultural, emotional, and political interests, it is a development which can only contribute to the power of the Black community as a whole. It can certainly never diminish it, for it is through the coming together of self-actualized individuals, female and male, that any real advances can be made. Period. Eat it up. The old sexual power relationships based on a dominant/subordinate model between unequals have not served us as a people nor as individuals. Black women who define ourselves and our goals beyond the sphere of a sexual relationship can bring to any endeavor the realized focus of completed and therefore empowered individuals. Black women and men who recognize that the development of their particular strengths and interests does not diminish the other do not need to diffuse their energies fighting for control over each other. We can focus our attentions against the real economic, political, and social forces at the heart of the society which are ripping us and our families and our worlds apart. Increasingly, despite opposition, Black women are coming together to explore and to alter those manifestations of our society which oppress us in different ways from those that oppress Black men. This is no threat to Black men. It is only seen as one by those Black men who choose to embody within themselves the same manifestations of female oppression. For instance, no Black man has ever been forced to bear a child he did not want or could not support. Enforced sterilization and unavailable abortions are tools of oppression against Black women, as is rape. Only to those Black men who are unclear about the pathways of our own definition can the self-actualization and self-protective bonding of Black women be seen as a threatening development. Today, the red herring of lesbian baiting is being used in the Black community to obscure the true face of racism/sexism. Black women sharing close ties with each other politically or emotionally are not the enemies of Black men. Too frequently, however, some Black men attempt to rule by fear those Black women who are more ally than enemy. These tactics are expressed as threats of emotional rejection. Their poetry wasn't too bad, but I couldn't take all those lesies. I was like, what's a lesi? Lesbian. The black man saying this is a code warning every Black woman present, interested in a relationship with a man, and most Black women are, that 1, if she wishes to have her work considered by him, she must eschew any other allegiance except to him, and 2, any woman who wishes to retain his friendship and or support, had better not be tainted by woman-identified interests. If such threats of labeling, vilification, and or emotional isolation are not enough to bring black women docility into camps as followers or persuade us to avoid each other politically and emotionally, then the rules by terror can be expressed physically, as on the campus of a New York State college in the late 1970s, where black women sought to come together around women's concerns. Phone calls threatening violence were made to those black women who dared to explore the possibilities of a feminist connection with non-black women. Some of these women, intimidated by threats and the withdrawal of black male approval, did turn against their sisters. When threats did not prevent the attempted coalition of feminists, the resulting campus-wide hysteria left some black women beaten and raped. Whether the threats by black men actually led to these assaults or merely encouraged the climate of hostility within which they could occur, the results upon the women attacked were the same. War, imprisonment, and the streets have decimated the ranks of black males of marriageable age. The fury of many black heterosexual women against white women who date black men is rooted in this unequal sexual equation within the black community, since whatever threatens to widen the equation is deeply and articulately resented. But this is essentially unconstructive resentment because it extends sideways only. It can never result in true progress on the issue because it does not question the vertical lines of power or authority, nor the sexist assumptions which dictate the terms of that competition. And the racism of white women might be better addressed where it is less complicated by their own sexual oppression. In this situation, it is not the non-black woman who calls the tune, but rather the black woman who turns away from himself. But rather the black man who turns away from himself and his sisters, or who, through a fear borrowed from white men, reads her strength not as a resource but as a challenge. All too often, the message comes loud and clear to black women from black men. I am the only prize worth having, and there are not too many of me, and remember, I can always go elsewhere, so if you want me, you better stay in your place, which is always from one another, or I will call you lesbian and wipe you out. Black women are programmed to define ourselves within this male attention and to compare with each other for it rather than to recognize and move upon our common interests. This tactic of encouraging horizontal hostility to becloud more pressing issues of oppression is by no means new nor limited to relations between women. The same tactic is used to encourage separation between black women and men. In discussions around the hiring and firing of black faculty at universities, the charge is frequently heard that black women are more easily hired than black men. For this reason, black women's problems of promotion and tenure are not to be considered important since they are only taking jobs away from black men. Here again, energy is being wasted on fighting each other over the pitifully few crumbs allowed us rather than being used in a joining of forces to fight for a more realistic ratio of black faculty. The latter would be a vertical battle against racist policies of the academic structure itself, one which can result in real power and change. Think about it. Like, you know how there's like man versus women, black man versus black women, like this discussion, typically on online channels that you see, but also in reality, because what we see in social media is also a reflection in reality, where it's like this idea of man versus women, versus, everyone is against, rather than thinking like, okay, what's the problem? Patriarchy, white supremacy, but it's like, these things, these social constructions, these institutions, these ideologies are pitting us against each other rather than us being like, we're not the problem, you are. You know what I mean? Against racist policies of the academic structure itself, one which could result in real power and change. It is the structure at the top which desires changelessness and which profits from these apparently endless kitchen wars. Like the diaspora wars. Shut up. Pick up a book on Pan-Africanism. Please. A really good book to start with, Pan-Africanism in the African Diaspora by Ronald Walters. Instead of keeping our attention focused upon our real needs, enormous energy is being wasted in the Black community today in anti-lesbian hysteria. Yet women-identified women, those who sought their own destinies and attempted to execute them in the absence of male support, have been around in all of our communities for a long time. As Yvonne Flowers of York College pointed out in a recent discussion, the unmarried aunt, childless or otherwise, what's her name? I think it was also in Alice Childress's work. It's on the tip of my tongue. I need to go back and read that book. But that will be one of the books that we read after In the Cause of Freedom. Whose home and resources were often a welcome haven for different members of the family, was a familiar figure in many of our childhoods. And within the homes of our Black communities today, it is not the Black lesbian who is battering and raping our underage girl children out of displaced and sickening frustration. The Black lesbian has come under increasing attack from both Black men and heterosexual Black women. In the same way that the existence of the self-defined Black woman is no threat to the self-defined Black man, the Black lesbian is an emotional threat only to those Black women whose feelings of kinship and love for other Black women are problematic in some way. For so long, we have been encouraged to view each other with suspicion as eternal competitors or as the visible face of our own self-rejection. Ooh, she ate with that one. That one was good. Ooh. Sorry. Yet traditionally, Black women have always bonded together in support of each other. Wait, girl, that was good. Yet traditionally, Black women have always bonded together in support of each other. However, uneasily, and in the face of whatever other allegiances which militated against the bonding. Is that the right word? Did I say that right? Preventing be a powerful or conclusive factor of militate. Yeah, I said that right. Okay, pure. We have banded together with each other for wisdom and strength and support, even when it was only in relationship to one man. We need only look at the close, although highly complex and involved relationships between African co-wives or at the Amazon warriors of ancient Dahomey? Don't make fun of me. Pronunciation. Dahomey, period. Who fought together as the king's main and most ferocious bodyguard. We need only to look at the more promising power wielded by the West African market women associations of today and those governments which have risen and fallen at their pleasure. In a retelling of her life, a 92-year-old Efek Ibibo, EFIK, I'm sorry for pronouncing it incorrectly, IBIBIO, woman of Nigeria, recalls her love for another woman. I had a woman friend to whom I revealed my secrets. She was very fond of keeping secrets to herself. We acted as husband and wife. We always moved hand in glove, and my husband and hers knew about our relationship. The villagers nicknamed us twin sisters. When I found out the gear when I was out of gear with my husband, she would be the one to restore peace. I often sent my children to go and work for her in return for her kindness to me. My husband, being more fortunate to get more pieces of land than her husband, allowed some to her, even though she was not my co-wife. On the west coast of Africa, the Fawn of Dahomey still have 12 different kinds of marriage. One of them is known as giving the goat to the buck, where a woman of independent means marries another woman who then may or may not bear children, all of whom will belong to the bloodline of the first woman. Some marriages of this kind are arranged to provide heirs for women of means who wish to remain free, and some are lesbian relationships. Marriages like these occur throughout Africa in several different places among different peoples. Routinely, the women involved are accepted members of their communities, evaluated not by their sexuality, but by their respective places in the community. While a piece of each black woman remembers the old ways of another place, when we enjoyed each other in a sisterhood of work and play and power, other pieces of us, less functional, eye one another with suspicion. In the interests of separation, black women have been taught to view each other as always suspect, heartless competitors for the scarce male, the all-important prize that could legitimate our existence. This dehumanizing denial of self is no less lethal than the dehumanization of racism, to which it is closely allied. That was good. She real good. She is really good. I really like her work. Okay. Do I know how to highlight? If the recent attack upon lesbians in the black community is based solely upon an aversion to the idea of sexual contact between members of the same sex, a contact which has existed for ages in most of the female compounds across the African continent, why then is the idea of sexual contact between black men so much more easily accepted or unremarkable? Is the imagined threat simply the existence of self-motivated, self-defined black women who will not fear nor suffer terrible retribution from the gods because she does not necessarily seek her face in a man's eyes, even if he has fathered her children? Female-headed households in the black community are not always situations by default. The distortion of relationship which says, I disagree with you, so I must destroy you, leaves us, black people, with basically uncreative victories, defeated in any common struggle. This jugular vein psychology is based on the fallacy that your assertion or affirmation of self is an attack upon myself, or that my defining myself will somehow prevent or retard your self-definition. Pause. So I saw this with this conversation about trans women online. People were saying that trans women were a threat to women's identity. Huh? Just because a trans woman is a trans woman does not make me less of a woman. She's just a woman. I'm still a woman. You know what I mean? But there are people that believe that a trans woman's identification is an attack on their own identification as a woman. No, girl. No. That's not how it works. Someone else being a woman does not make you less of a woman. Your womanhood is based off of you as an individual. You know what I mean? Okay. The supposition of one sex needs the other's acquiescence in order to exist prevents both from moving together as self-defined persons towards a common goal. This kind of action is a prevalent error among oppressed peoples. It is based upon the false notion that there is only a limited and particular amount of freedom that must be divided up between us, with the largest and juiciest pieces of liberation going as spoils to the victor or the stronger. So instead of joining together to fight for more, we quarrel between ourselves for our larger slice of one pie. Black women fight between ourselves over men instead of pursuing and using who we are and our strengths for lasting change. Black women and men fight between ourselves over who has more of a right to freedom instead of seeing each other's struggles as a part of our own and vital to our common goals. Black and white women fight between ourselves over who is more oppressed instead of seeing those areas in which our causes are the same. Of course, this last separation is worsened by the intransigent. Let's look that one up. Intransigent, unwilling or refusing to change one's views or to agree about something. Intransigent. Of course, this last separation is worsened by the intransigent racism that white women too often fail to or cannot address in themselves. She said it. At a recent Black literary conference, a heterosexual Black woman stated that to endorse lesbianism was to endorse the death of our race. I'm sorry. This position reflects acute fright or a faulty reasoning, for once again it ascribes false power to difference. To the racist, Black people are so powerful that the presence of one can contaminate a whole lineage. Good. To the heterosexist, lesbians are so powerful that the presence of one can contaminate the whole sex. This position supposes that if we do not eradicate lesbianism in the Black community, all Black women will become lesbians. It also supposes that lesbians do not have children. Both suppositions are patently false. As Black women, we must deal with all the realities of our lives which place us at risk as Black women, homosexual or heterosexual. In 1977, in Detroit, a young Black actress, Patricia Cohen, was invited to audition for a play called Hammer and was then hammered to death by the young Black male playwright. Patricia Cohen was not killed because she was Black. She was killed because she was a Black woman, and her cause belongs to us all. History does not record whether or not she was a lesbian, but only that she had a 4-year-old child. Of the four groups, Black and white women, Black and white men, Black women have the lowest average wage. This is a vital concern for all of us, no matter with whom we sleep. As Black women, we have the right and responsibility to define ourselves and to seek our allies in common cause. With Black men against racism and with each other, and white women against sexism. But most of all, as Black women, we have the right and responsibility to recognize each other without fear and to love where we choose. Both lesbian and heterosexual Black women today share a history of bonding and strength to which our sexual identities and our other differences must not blind us. Yay! Thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. The next is the use of the erotic as power. I'm excited to read this one. Anyways, it's not that long. Okay, good night.